I'm Kath Jones and this is the Community Garden Project at Finbar Neighbourhood House. This is our compost bucket exchange program where on average 30 buckets a week get dropped off by local houses and a couple of local cafes. So I do the composting on Mondays and Fridays. So on average, like I said, it's 15 buckets. So this is where they drop off their kitchen scraps and then they take up a clean bucket home and then fill it up again. So they're free to fill it up over the week, and it's fairly fuss free. It's got a lid, and so that way all their organic waste isn't going to landfill. So then I take these, fill up my wheelbarrow, and depending on what's in the buckets, it'll go to one of our many composting or worm farm systems. It's fuss free on their end, as in it's purely organic waste, so that can be citrus, onion, garlic. So for the people that don't compost at home for whatever reason, if they've had troubles, worm farms or composting, or they think it's too hard, then I will do that. So that's fairly valuable to me because I'll show you what I then turn it into. So here's one of my first gardens that I put in 12 months plus ago. So using the community compost, I've been able to do a no dig bed, and also every sort of new thing that I do here, then I can turn it into a workshop, and perhaps someone could do that if they've got a lawn space that they'd like to turn into productive growing. But the community compost has made that possible. So that was newspaper on a bed on the lawn, and over time I've built up soil depth by generating earthworm activity and layering up organic matter and mulching. So this is the first season one of the first seasons that we've had quite a lot in there, because it gets quite a bit of shade. I'll just grab a shovel and show you the worm activity. So part of good organic gardening is, and one of the true testimony of healthy soil, is a worm count. So certified organic growers and producers will have to actually there will be a count, so a worm count. So to show you, I'll just dig an open space. I've got a shady spot. No, they're in retreat. I'll choose a shady spot, but you can see the amazing structure that the soil has by turning a tired lawn into and feeding it with what would be, considered waste, and turning it into something healthy and productive. I'll get a shady spot, perhaps. Now, I've just scratched the surface, and of course as soon as the sun hits them, they'll go into retreat. So just in that 5 centimetres, I can see 3 worms there. So here, and I know that because every time I go to plant any seedlings. Can you see it, Julie?
No, I can't actually, but oh yes, I see one.
So they obviously don't like the sun, but there's some beautiful structure there, so it holds moisture. Alright, and I'll show you the worm farms. Okay, so these are in the shade because they're a cool system, so the compost happens slowly, but I'm able to get liquid fertilizer, worm juice, but it's mostly compost leachate, which holds, so diluted down, becomes a liquid feed that's a soluble plant food that can be added to the gardens. So we've got a nice full worm farm, lots of baby worms there. And then so these are all the systems here for worm farming. And then I've got one compost bin there. So as I need it, I build up more systems. Hang on. So these buckets I've just grabbed, so I don't know what's in them yet. They could be coffee, they could be eggshells, which I use for calcium and aerating. So depending on what's in them, if they've got a lot of bread, I'll put them into the hot compost. and then depending on what's there, I'll divvy it between the systems. I'll show you the systems on the other side now. Right, so this is an earthworm farm, a compost worm farm. It's not one of my favourites, but it's good that I've got some I've bought, but some I've found, or some people have donated because they didn't work for them. This is about a $50 system, and it's a compost worm farm. So it's got the tap, just like the others, but it's a bigger one. It's in the sun, and that's okay. It's painted white, and that's because it's so large, the worms can retreat to the middle. So I'm showing you that because it's important to note that I have got some of everything available on the market. So when people come through the house, or they're here with playgroup or having a party, they can go, oh, I wanted to know how that works, or they'd like to look into getting their own. So I'd like to say, look, there's this and there's this. It's more or less like a display home in the sense that I can show them how, and if it suits them, then so they can inquire and persevere that. So these are the garden beds here that are productive beds that we grow in to inspire people and the children walking past, or the community members, but to also supply the share table or the share shelves at the front, inspired by Food is Free project. So I believe that everyone should have access to quality organic food, regardless of money or so. So the compost feeds these gardens, and then I harvest to stock the shelves, and also to save the seeds to supply the seed share. So a local cafe on Bridge Road called Azul, she drops around their juicing scraps, and they're nice and chopped up. They're usually quite acidic, but it's just adds a diversity in the compost bin.
So that all comes out of the coffee machine?
Yeah, so this is the spent coffee, which I use as a top mulch, as a smell deterrent, or an earthworm attractant. I rave about it to other people. It's a really good nitrogen fix to soil, and it feeds any microbe activity, holds moisture, and it's great for the compost. So depending on where I need it most is where I'll pour it, but she kindly drops off quite a few of these large buckets every week. And it should be noted as well that 1 kilo of organic waste, that if it was to go to landfill, produces the equivalent of 2 kilos of CO2 gases. And as of September 26th this year, the world hit 400.97 parts per million of greenhouse gases, and that's a turning point, a tipping point that we can't come back from. So if I can get every household dropping off their organic waste that can be composted aerobically and then put to good use, then that's a massive environmental benefit.
Hello, I'm Roger. I'm a participant at Finbar Neighbourhood Garden. I've got a whole bunch of stuff grown by me and with help of others at Finbar. I love gardening, I love being outdoors, and as the other people have said, being outdoors is a great aid to ward off the blues. So I entirely agree with that. And you get, if you do gardening while you're outdoors, then you get the benefit of good wholesome vegetables. Hallelujah. That's it.
Hi, so this is inspired by the Food is Free project. So the produce harvested from here goes out there, and I'd like to think it's not about feeding the world or solving hunger, but I would like to think that in some part this helps the nutrition and the overall health of the community, say or even the enjoyment of the family meal, by they can grab a little bit of sage, and that they otherwise wouldn't buy from Coles or Safeway because it's $4 a punnet and they can't use it all, and they want a little sprig of this, and it brings about a little bit of joy, or even the health benefits of mint, but they're not going to buy themselves a bunch and put it in their tea. So and it gives them a little bit of like, oh, what's going to be on the shelves today if they're out and about and they're walking and things. And it's a reduction on food waste as well, because having conversations with people or people that live on their own, and they're not going to buy a whole bunch of something, so they don't end up eating it, they don't end up buying it, and so they go without. So, and speaking to a single lady who the recipe says 2 spring onions, and she says, I'm not going to buy a whole bunch of spring onions. So, you know, their meal ends up being pretty bland, but they're free just to take 1 or 2, and so it's a reduction on food waste. And it's a reduction on food miles as well, because they're grown here and they're local and they can take what they need. They're not grown miles and miles and miles away in sand and sprayed with synthetic fertilisers. They're nutritionally superior because of what they've been grown in. And then we've got the seed shed. So again, and also that this is open 24/7, so they don't have to be a house member, they don't have to have gate keys, and anyone's free to come along and take. And generally I don't see or meet the people that are taking the things, I just see the empty shelves. So these, inside these, a little sort of single serve planting, so just enough for 1 plant, and it might mean that they'll have a go at planting something that they haven't. Or I've seen a grandpa with a couple of his granddaughters come and say, oh, purple cauliflower, that'll be interesting. So it can give people a go at growing, and then all these seeds are accessible and they're GMO free and they're saved by myself, and I've grown them true to form before, and I generally put out here what can go in to be planted now, so it's fuss free, that they don't have to go, oh, I don't know when I should plant them or whatever. So this is a changing scape, and this is a changing scape as well.